Hello everyone and welcome to my video about Company of Heroes 2 Attrition Mode. I'm Set Kipris, the Cynical Croat, and I'll be explaining the gameplay mechanics of this newly implemented mode and my opinion on it. The first thing that you will notice about this mode is that all your base buildings have been constructed, that most of the upgrades for all the factions have been researched, and that you're not gaining any more resources. You will be given 2400 manpower, 300 munitions and 260 fuel. You will also be given 12 command points, enabling you to call all the units and use all the abilities of each commander. So the idea of this mode is that you're given a limited amount of resources and you need to capture the victory points and trickle down the enemy's points to zero. Alternatively, if you choose so, you can roll into his base and raise it to the ground in order to win. Since you're not gaining any more resources, capturing other sectors is useless. This takes away from the resource management of a general Company of Heroes match in which you would capture territory and then secure it, and enables you to focus more on the tactical management of the match, which means that you're more focused on what are your soldiers and vehicles doing. Since you are given a limited amount of resources, every soldier lost and every vehicle destroyed can alter the course of the battle and therefore the whole match. There are some differences with the victory points in that they have 100 points instead of 500. All this taken in, which means the limited resources, therefore the limited troops that you can call in, and the smaller point counter for the victory points, makes Attrition Mode ideal for short matches. If you ever played the Company of Heroes 1 or 2 match, you will know that matches can last somewhere between 20 to 40 minutes. It depends on how many players are playing, their skill, and how quick the ownership of the victory points changes. I played a couple of matches of attrition. I played with other players, I played with a standard AI, and I have to say that I really enjoyed this mode. It enables you to call in the best units that you have, so you can experiment that way. For example, right off the bat I called an Is-2 heavy tank, which although gave me a relatively powerful unit on the field, it also rendered me rather limited because I couldn't order any other vehicle that I wished for. All that considered, there could be some potential problems with this mode, particularly with the units. As you know, and if you bought the Western Front armies, each of the armies has some type of heavy armor unit, except the Americans, and that is a problem. The Soviets can call in the Is-2 heavy tank or even the KV-2 heavy tank. The Wehrmacht can call an Elephant or Tiger tank, and of course Oberkommando West can call a King Tiger tank. The Americans cannot call any type of heavy armor, and that is where I see the problem in this game. The fact that all the other armies can bring in the big toys while the Americans have to focus more on tactics. Now some of you might say, well, the Americans generally in Company of Heroes 2 have to focus more on tactics. Even their equipment is more focused on tactics. For example, the American smoke grenade has a larger radius and can be thrown farther than a regular smoke grenade. And that's true, so the Americans have to focus more on tactics, which means positioning their AT guns in the right places and so on and so forth. But the problem is, in Company of Heroes 1, the Americans had the M26 Pershing heavy tank if they had the armor company. Now some of you might say, well, the Pershing didn't see so much action in the Second World War. It appeared in 1945 when the war was technically already won. And that argument stands, and I won't try to deny it if you're arguing on a historical basis. But the problem is that in Company of Heroes 1, and if you played that game, then you will know, you could have used an M26 heavy Pershing tank in the campaign and in the multiplayer, despite the fact that they were limited in numbers, and despite the fact that it was 1944 when the Pershing heavy tank didn't exactly arrive on the battlefield. I didn't have any complaints with that. Sure, historical accuracy was sacrificed in that regard, but it was balanced, because if the Germans wanted to order a heavy tank, they would have to choose the Blitzkrieg doctrine. If the Americans wanted to order a heavy tank, they would have to call in the armor company. In this game, every army has some sort of heavy armor except the Americans, and that's something that bugs me. Now, if someone's watching this and he's a member of the Company of Heroes community, here's what I would suggest. Let the Americans have their M26 Pershing tank in the same way that Oberkommando West can have their King Tiger tank. Now, obviously, a Pershing can go against King Tiger tank, so make it cheaper and make it accessible in the same way that Oberkommando West can do it, which means Oberkommando West must build all their structures before they can call in the Tiger tank, and they have to pay a lot of resources for that. Make it the same for the Americans. Once they call in all their officers and all the unlocks have been purchased, then allow them to call the M26 heavy Pershing tank to the field, with a reduced price, of course, compared to the King Tiger tank. I think it would greatly balance the game, because let's face it, it's heavy armor, but it's not that heavy, and it would be nice to see the Americans bring in some heavy guns to the field. With all that in mind, this was my video about Attrition Mode. I think that is a interesting mode to be played, and I would really like to see some heavy armor for the Americans. This has been Seth Kipris, signing off.